Hello and welcome to another lesson of our Mixed Media Basics. Today we're exploring my favoriteest part, and that is mark making. This is the heart and soul of mixed media, and it's by far just the best thing in the world. I mean, in my opinion. No, let's just say that this is the ultimate truth. Mark making is the best thing in the world, and today we're gonna get to play with it. Mark making means everything you do with your hand, a mark that you leave on your substrate that's caused by your hand. And beautiful things can be caused by your hands and very unique marks. It's the visual language of your art. One thing to remember, this lesson is all about experimenting and exploring, not about perfection. Our marks is how our personality shows up in our art. In order to make this true and authentic, we have to allow play. We cannot be rigid or try and replicate someone else's mark in the exactly same way. Allow yourself looseness, allow yourself to have fun, and brilliant things will happen. Let's start with the simplest tools that I am sure you already have in your stash, and that is pencils, pens, and markers. Now, they may seem like a very everyday tool that obviously you know how to use, right? But there is a certain magic to tools and supplies that are very simple, because the more you work with them, the more they reflect your personality. And that's why I think this is the perfect one to start with. When it comes to pencils, in our mixed media world, I think it's helpful to divide them into water-soluble and not water-soluble. And this will serve you later as you work with layers. So water-soluble are, for example, water-soluble crayons, water-soluble pencils, water-soluble blocks, and they work in a very simple way. So you apply them as you would any pencil, but then you get a brush, dip it in water, and that pigment can be activated and can sort of look like a watercolor. So you kind of get two in one, and that's really exciting. So I've just shown you a Neo Color 2. That's a nice crayon, very popular in mixed media. There's cheaper alternatives or different brands and manufacturers. Some will be more crayony and oily, some will be more chalky, but all water-soluble pencils and pastels work in the same way. And here is a big hit among mixed media artists. These are called Inktense diamond pencils. They have intense like ink colors. So you see it looked brown, but when you add a little bit of water, it just bursts and looks really quite rather wild. And here we are with our first mark making, right? We can make a very random scribbly mark, full of energy, that brings dynamic look and vibe to our art. We can apply water on top of it. I have like a fan brush here, that's a really fun one to use. So just apply water, and a lot of it, and then tip your page a little bit to let it drip. And if you add another color to it, a little bit more water, they start blending together, activating that pigment and dripping wherever they think is appropriate to drip. And then we have pencils and sticks and pastels that aren't water soluble. And there is so much choice in that family that to me is really exciting, because just on my one hand, right, I have 5 different tools that give significantly different result, each one of them, and they are all pretty inexpensive. So first of all is willow charcoal, super cheap. You can make thin lines, you can make big marks, you can smudge it, you can be very expressive, and you can be really, really precise and small. Then here is a graphite stick. The chunkiness of it means that you hold it differently than you would hold a plain pencil, right? And that, believe it or not, affects your mark and the way you use it. And I think that's really exciting. The result is much lighter than the charcoal. It's not as smudgeable, though it does smudge. It's probably my fingers just dirty. It kind of glides on paper. It's really nice and buttery to use, and I really like it. And here's a plain pencil, right? So the mark is different again, but this is a charcoal pencil, I think, yes. So just like this, but in a thinner, more precise form. Here's another graphite pencil that you can replace the leads of, and you can get them in different colors, yes, and you can get them in different formats, so like a pastel, so very chalky or really hard. And the mark looks different again, and because of its thickness, once again, you use it differently, and exactly the polar opposite of it is a technical mechanical pencil, which is made for precise work, and maybe you'd think, well, that's not for mixed media, you know. That's more for technical drawings, but it's perfect for mixed media because you can add little details. You can do very fine drawings, and writing. That's very hard to achieve with a tool like that, right? It looks different. So these are the most basic mark making tools. Water-soluble, colorful or not, and not water-soluble, colorful or not. Sticks, pencils, precise tools, chunky tools. They are all fun, but now let's explore the marks that we can make with them. So the first thing I mentioned was an expressive bold mark. I'm going to go with this charcoal to show you how much energy you can bring to your mark. A good thing to do sometimes when you practicing mark making is to stand up, put some fun music on, and really loosen up because your body's doing the whole work here, you know? Mark making isn't about using your brain, it's about using your hands, your body, and allowing that energy to sort of come out on your paper. So marks can be very fast, and that is quite dynamic, right? They can be really messy, and that is quite dynamic too. Or they can be very bold, but put in a more messy way, and they are also dynamic. There's nothing calm about any of these marks, right? And that's sometimes the energy you want to bring to your work. That's sometimes the thing you want to be drawing. But there can also be marks that are more calm, more peaceful, that are more orderly, less chaotic, done with precision and calm. And that can be a really nice experience too. And sometimes you will want that vibe in your art, or you'll just feel like that. And the marks done in a certain way will express where you are at. And I do love that as well. So marks can be wild, they can be calm, and there is a lot in between. The way you use your drawing tool, the way you hold it in your hand, like I mentioned, and the amount of pressure you apply will reflect in the mark that you're getting. So let's go back to this charcoal, right? I can press it really hard to get very bold lines, or I can go really light to get thin, wispy, irregular marks. And the same applies to even pencils, right? There's certain element of boldness. If you press your pencil boldly, this reflects on paper, and if you go light, that's the feeling you're getting. So it's really, the mark you make can really reflect either how you feel or what you want to be showing on your page. And now let's apply the same ideas to markers. Markers come in different shapes and sizes, and they can also be divided into water-soluble and not water-soluble. And within the not water soluble ones, there is a group of markers that are completely permanent. So they're not washable, like Sharpies, you know, they will go on everything and they will never wash off. So if your kid draws on a sofa, then that's it, unless you have any golden tips. So, you know, there's that opportunity as well. But regards water soluble, they work exactly the same as the water soluble pencil. So you apply, so you put some color down, you get a brush, and it can sort of move around. You are able to pick up that pigment. So if you'd be working on a gessoed surface, I think it would be a little bit easier. And then obviously Sharpie, it's not gonna happen, right? It's not going anywhere. And then there's also things like acrylic markers. I know this is confusing, there's so much, right? Acrylic markers, which is basically a marker filled with acrylic paint. And you know a thing or two about acrylic paints now, right? So it allows you to use paint, but in a slightly different way. You can make marks that are more personal and more precise. You can have more control. And you can write with them, of course. And they're really fun to use. And of course, they are not water solubles, just as acrylics aren't. I mean, this one is because it's not dried. You have to let it dry. So that's that. But it's not water soluble. That's the rule. Just put in your notes, acrylic markers, not water soluble. But they can be layered with acrylics as well. So that's really, really fun. And just as with pencils, we can use markers to make bold marks and light marks. This got a brush nib, so it's really, really fun. You can be very precise and you can be really bold. And you can draw, write, make random lines. And it's a lot of fun. So now let's play with that. Let's fill one page with marks, and they can be done with pencils, water soluble or not, markers, pens, whatever you got at hand. Explore how each supply behaves differently and how you can apply more or less pressure, how you can make calm and crazy wild marks, and which ones really make you feel good. Now, if you are holding your pencil right now and watching this video and you're not quite sure what to do and what mark to make, should you copy mine or should you try and make up something else? Just start. Just put down this first mark on paper. Copy mine if you like. It doesn't really matter, but just make a start, okay? Don't overthink this. Let's say start with lines or circles and see where that gets you. Now, the thing about mark making is that the more you make, the more you are drawn to a certain kind. The more you feel like, I really like the feeling of, let's say, these loops, right? Or these very straight lines. And that's what you should really chase. That's what you should really explore further and further, maybe with different supplies, maybe in different colors, because that's your personality showing up on your paper, and that's a really important moment. So as much as we're exploring supplies here, we're also exercising intentionality and presence. So you need to be present during this exercise. Don't wander off too much in your thoughts. Just focus on how you're feeling, and if there is a feeling that is positive and is nice, try and hold on to it. Some of you will be naturally more drawn into lines and marks that are organic in shape. So maybe circles, very fluid lines. Others will be drawn into straight line, maybe geometric shapes, and that is really good. When you look at my page, you'll see a certain kind of mark repeating and repeating. That does not mean that this is the mark to use in your mixed media, right? This means that this is my mark and yours can be completely different. And I want you to appreciate your mark and not overthink too much or try and copy mine. At some point, as you are experimenting with mark making, some certain symbols may start showing up. Like in my art, it's always florals and foliage and birds. I just can't seem to escape that. And that is also something worth paying attention to, because this may be a start of your signature style. This may be the reflection of who you are and where you are at right now, or what you feel really drawn to. So don't ignore it. If something starts showing up and repeats all over again and again, stick with it. Try and explore it a little bit further. Right, so now let's move on to the second kind of mark, and that will be fluid marks. Now we explored that a little bit here because we've added water to our water-soluble pencils and markers, but this is a whole big world, so I want to pay a lot of attention to this because this is so fun. There is relatively quite a lot of control in the marks that we made with pencils and markers, right? You get to have them exactly how you want them to be. But I think one of the biggest challenges in life is working with unpredictability and allowing things to just flow. Right? And mixed media is the perfect place to exercise that. And we're gonna do that with fluid marks. We're gonna use watercolors and inks and even coffee or tea to do that. Now I have gessoed my page because I always find it easier to work on a gessoed page with very fluid and liquid media like inks or watercolors. It is not necessary if you're working on watercolor paper or acrylic paper that's very, very thick. But if you do have gesso, apply a thin layer because it's gonna look really nice. Right, so we're talking mark making. You already used watercolors, so you know what they're about. But now let's think of ways and tools with which we apply watercolors. So usually you would think obviously a paintbrush, right? But that's not where it ends. That's just the beginning really. So the silicone brush that I shown you at the beginning of our course is a fantastic tool for spreading your gesso or acrylics, but can also work with watercolors. But before we even move to watercolors, let's just use this cup of coffee. It's been sitting on my desk for 2 days now. I made it specifically for painting with, so don't worry, I'm not going to be drinking it. This is espresso, so it's quite strong coffee. And I have a little pipette here, or you could just use, I don't know, a spoon to get it out of the cup and just drop it onto your page. You see how beautifully brown this is now. We don't often maybe use coffee in our painting, but I think that's a problem because it's one of the most beautifulest browns I ever seen. Right, and now I'm gonna get a big brush to apply a big splodge of watercolor. I have some pink here on my palette. I'm gonna make sure it's all very wet so it drips off my brush. And maybe this brown of coffee and this pink will meet and blend together a little bit. Actually, I can even spill this straight from my palette to make a really big, beautiful puddle. Oh, see, this just went in. That's just so beautiful and so exciting when this happens. But now let's do the mark making, right? So we can use tools such as skewers or toothpicks to shift this paint. It's not just brushes. We can draw little lines between colors to let them pull together and connect. And if you like the smell of coffee, this is gonna be a process you really enjoy. We can dip our skewer into the ink and make marks with it. But of course, this is very different to using a marker because, you know, you can't control the amount of paint or coffee that sticks to your skewer, right? Some of it does, some of it doesn't. The marks are brighter, lighter, darker in places. In some places it spills, and that is the beauty of it. Okay, we can also use the silicone brush that I mentioned to shift up color, spread it into big, bold areas. That paint starts flowing. There are also tools like metal nibs, right, for ink, and bamboo pens that you can also draw with and spread your color with. But even things like cotton buds, cotton swabs, Q-tips are perfect dipped in a little bit of that paint, and they just make beautiful little dots. I'm gonna dip it in some paint on my palette to get more bolder color. But you can also, of course, use them to draw with. And of course, you can tip your page a little bit to let the paint spread. You can use your fingers. And you can use tools such as these mark making tools. They are made for mark making and texture making to shift the color in a way that you like. And as I was making my coffee, I thought, how about dropping a little bit of that coffee grounds onto the wet paper. It smells really good. And if you experiment with your watercolors, inks and coffee or tea, just like I did, on your paper, even if you do exactly the same what I did, you will still get different marks because, believe it or not, your hand is really special and the marks it makes are unique. Whether you try and strive for it or it's completely intuitive and accidental, the marks are different. There's also different ways in which you can make a mark in half-dried paint, acrylic or watercolor or ink or even that coffee. So like here, I have this clean silicone brush and this is semi-dry watercolor and I'm pressing it down and making this little mark by lifting the paint with the silicone brush. And we can do the same with a bamboo pen or a skewer, simply kind of erasing some of that color. The drier the paint, the more precise this line is going to look. If it's wet, it's going to pull and blend together. But this is a perfect opportunity to add some personal symbols or writing to your art. And also, of course, the world of sponges, right? Lift color or apply color with sponges. Lifting is super easy and fun. Semi-dry paint, smudging, pressing down, rubbing off, or dipping in paint. Like I will dip this in some of this yellow ochre and making new marks, which are random, much more random than marks that you would make with a pencil. And just like that, really accidentally and with a lot of enjoyment, we've created a background that we could take to the next level with a little bit of writing, maybe an image, or maybe with some extra symbols and marks to complete this page and let it reflect however we felt at that moment. So far, we've explored non-dimensional marks. Marks that are non-dimensional with lots of control and non-dimensional with moderate amount of control. Now I want to show you dimensional marks and textures. And this can still be used in our journaling. We will not be building up big dimensional 3D compositions. We will be bringing a little bit of that dimension texture into our journal, so you can still do it on a book and the book will mostly close flat. And that's really, really fun. I am doing it and demonstrating this on a spare sheet of paper just because I want my journal to dry and be ready for some more fun in a minute. But you can absolutely do it in a journal. And the supply that I recommend for playing with dimensional techniques is light molding paste or modeling paste, but light. Any manufacturer, any brand is fine. Light means that it dries faster, it's less dense, so it's just a little bit easier to use in the mixed media process where you want to work with several layers. Open your jar of modeling paste and apply it either with a silicone brush or an old credit card. And apply it in a layer that's not too thick, so you can obviously see it. And it's well covered. I'm just going to apply it in strips to demonstrate different techniques with it. But you could cover your whole page in it. So the layer has to be visible and has to be there, but don't make it too thick because it will take ages to dry, even with light molding paste. Let's say a thickness of a credit card would be roughly quite good. And here we are, we can bring back our skewers again, or our toothpicks, or our bamboo pens, and make marks in modeling paste. You see how easy this is now? This is completely wet modeling paste. So the marks that you've explored with pencils and markers, right? Maybe some of them feel like they could be your marks. This is a great opportunity to explore them with this different supply. So we basically removing the modeling paste with a different tool. So don't feel limited to the tools that I'm presenting. Look around your house, right? Maybe a little fork or a spoon or a Q-tip again. Now, while I was working on these two first strips, this one was drying and now it's semi-dry. So when I touch it, it doesn't really make a mark, my finger, but I can feel it's kind of soft underneath. And we are going to use some stamps on it. This is so fun. Now, stamps are something that is meant to be used with ink. So you can get them mounted onto a wooden block or just on a bit of rubber. And you can get them from different designers and manufacturers. There's so many designs. It can be quite overwhelming, but they are so fun. So let me show you here on a clean piece of paper with ink. With an ink pad, you just dab it onto the ink pad and transfer the pattern. But you can also use them in semi-wet modeling paste. And that's what I'm gonna do. So I have this stamp here, that's like circles. So I'm gonna put it down, press it, and lift it up. Oh, my stamp was a bit dirty, sorry, so it's pink. But you see the texture is here and it looks so fun. And that's such a quick and easy way of creating texture. I have this bird that I cut out of some thick foam, so that can work as a stamp. Press it down, make sure, oh, I think I moved it a little bit, so no, it's fine, it's great. This is a piece of foam again that I've cut up into this shape and glued it onto another piece of foam. Very easy to make. And it works really, really well. Besides, all of my stamps are dirty with pink ink for some reason. So yeah, the marks are pink, but you know, they shouldn't be. So now let's bring all of these mark making techniques we've learned together to create one page. I think you're there, right? Let's create a background and add some of our marks and then add one piece of collage to kind of finish it off. So I would like to start with fluid layers, just as we did here, which is still drying, but in a slightly different way this time. Now this page has been covered with gesso because, as you know, I like to use gesso. So let me get some of this coffee again. Now I am already planning to put my focal point, so that's my collage element, right in the middle. And that will be this dancing couple, which is yet to be cut out. That comes from our printable vintage collection, which is a great collection of focal points, perfect to finish off your journal pages. So knowing that they will go in the middle, I want to create a beautiful background to go around them. So I don't need to focus on the center so much because that's gonna get covered. But I still, you know, want to work there so it all looks like it comes together. So I have spread this coffee. Now I'm going to add a little bit of that pink because I really loved how that pink looked like with coffee. I'm holding my brush, so I'm applying with a brush, but I am holding it by its end. So thanks to that, I am getting a slightly more random, less controlled mark. Adding a lot of water so the color and the paints can flow. Right, now I also have some Bombay ink. That's an India ink. It's basically like opaque liquid watercolor. You can use it with a brush. It comes with a little pipette. I'm going to use my own pipette because I like my own. And I'm just going to drip some of that color. I always love the combination of yellow ochre, gold ochre, and pink and brown. I don't know what it is about these colors, but I just love how they work together. And now let's shift it somehow. Let's put these marks, right? So I'm going to use that silicone brush because I love that. Just kind of let them blend and meet together. And the beauty here of using different fluid media is that you get very different almost layers straight away, because like that India ink, it's opaque, right? And our coffee and watercolor, they are very see-through. They are very faint, subtle, gentle colors. So it's really fun to see how both of these work together. Right, I'm gonna use one of these mark making tools. These are called Catalyst wedge tools. They're quite expensive, and you could make something like this quite easily out of a piece of thick cardboard. Just cut it up to create this comb-like edge. But they are so fun to use, and they're really like satisfying to hold. So if your budget ever stretches out, I would really recommend you get yourself a tool like that. Also perfect for canvas work. And there's a lot of pulls here. I want to soften it and I want to help it dry a little. So I'm gonna just mop it up a little bit with my cloth. And that leaves a mark straight away as well. So it all counts as mark making. And I love how this pink mixed together with that yellow ochre and with that coffee. It just looks so dreamy and so beautiful. I really like that. And now I want to add some darker marks, maybe with my Inktense pencil. So I'm just going to follow that circular shape for reasons unknown. And then add a little bit of water to blend that mark in with the background, make it more fluid. And as I pick up some of that color, I'm kind of adding more and more marks. And that can be very, very exciting. But I feel like I need more color. So let's add maybe more watercolor, because I have this palette here already waiting for me. So let's just try some of this. I have like a mix of blue and green. I have no idea what color that was originally, but you know, my palette gets a little bit messy, but I think it's just going to work well here. So I'm going to apply it with a brush, holding it by its end to let go of control and make a very loose and organic mark. I'm working on the edges to kind of bring it all together. Right, so that's our fluid marks. Now let's add a little bit of modeling paste, light modeling paste, and I'm going to apply it with my silicone brush. You could use an old credit card in just some areas. So keeping in mind where my focal point is going to be. Maybe I should add like almost a halo or a circle around them. So I'm going to be not very precise. I'm not going to cover it all with that modeling paste because I don't want to cover all of it, right? I love this pink. So I'm just going to apply it here and there, and I'm going to let it semi-dry, and then I'm going to add some stamps into it. Now this modeling paste is semi-dry, and I have this quite bold design of stamp that I'm going to press down onto it to get my pattern. I feel like my layer of modeling paste was too small. I want more space for this pattern to show, so I'm going to add a little bit more here and let it semi-dry again and do the same. I wasn't happy with how this stamp was transferring because I think this pattern was too large for my space. So I got a new stamp, slightly different, more like a fishnet, and I've covered the area where I worked with the larger stamp with a thin layer of modeling paste just to fill it in, and I can just basically start again, and that's really fun and very flexible. Of course, remember to wash your stamps afterwards, because that modeling paste, once it dries on your stamp, it really will spoil it. So just put it on a tap of water. I mean, ideally wipe it with a paper towel, but then you can wash off whatever remains with water. Right, and now we have to let it dry. Now, while the molding paste is still drying, we can fussy cut our focal point, and we can also add some more marks with pencils and markers. So I am going to grab that's a Stabilo O pencil, which is brilliant for any surface, and I'm just going to add a few marks, and I feel drawn to those leaves and floral marks, so I am going to do that and see where that takes me. But you could equally add circles, lines, words, or symbols that are representative of how you feel right now. So birds, hearts, flowers, butterflies, frogs, anything. Now let's see how we can bring this modeling paste texture into life with a little bit of color. I have this dark brown ink, and I'm gonna grab a pointed brush, dip it in that color, and I'm going to let it spread around this texture. Modeling paste is semi-resistant to color, so some of it will soak in, but we will be able to wipe off most of it. So let's just cover some areas of that modeling paste texture with that dark color. Don't be alarmed, this is all good. Everything's under control. Really making sure it soaks into the paper. Right, that's it for that brush. And now let's wipe it with a clean cloth. Put a little bit more clean water on top to be able to lift whatever we want to lift. And we're starting to see this texture a little bit more. Now, admittedly, some of that Mullen paste was wet, so I probably went a little bit too fast. That's fine, because I still have beautiful places where that texture shows really naturally and in a very organic way. And also by making these dark areas of color, we've created like a frame for our focal point, which will sit really nicely here right now. I would actually, now looking at how that focal point works, I would like to make these spread a little bit, so I'm going to add even more of that dark ink. And as you work with mixed media, this is something you'll notice a lot, that those scary moments when you're adding very dark color to a light area and it feels like, oh, have I ruined it? They will often turn into the best things you've ever done, because you will be bringing contrast and an element of surprise to your art. And I don't know how that works, but it works and it makes things better. No, but contrast is seriously one of the most important things in mixed media, I think, because it makes things stand out. It makes your art strong and impactful and bold. And I think that's really cool. And that texture is so visible right now. I will actually let this dry a little bit, let it sit in that texture a little bit more, and maybe dab the surface of that pattern to kind of get a little bit more contrast between the dark and light. But it's pretty good. So now the most important thing, let's let it all dry. Now let's glue down our focal point. I've covered this couple with a glue stick and I am putting them right in the center of my page. Everything's pretty dry, I hope. Oh, they look very happy. So the background kind of matches, right? Now we can help them stand out. When you have a busy background like that and the focal point seems to be getting lost in it, you can make it stand out in a very simple way. And you can do that by using a pencil. And it could be a pastel pencil, water-soluble pencil, or a plain pencil or graphite pencil like I have here. And all we need to do is to draw a little outline around. Now, a graphite pencil or a soft pencil will have a big advantage. You will be able to smudge it lightly to give this a more natural look, if that's what you want to go for. So, kind of clean finger and rub that edge so it looks almost like shadow rather than a line. You could do that with color, so it doesn't necessarily have to be gray. It could be more fun, like I'm gonna go with this orange maybe. You could do it with white to give them a little glow. You could do it for a bolder look. You could go with a marker or a pen, or you could go with a water-soluble pencil. This one actually was water-soluble. And wet it to give it, again, a more natural watercolor-like look. In this case, I don't think they need to stand out much more. They are pretty obvious right here. And the thing that helps here is that this focal point is black and white. So that's strong contrast in colors on a background that's very colorful. So they naturally will differentiate from the background a lot. The lack of color will differentiate them and they will stand out. Okay, just maybe a little bit around his head to kind of bring it together. And here it is, a little bit of mark making and a lot of fun. So we have explored mark making with easy to control art supplies, mark making that is a little bit more difficult to control, and dimensional mark making, and all of these can be used in your regular art practice. I would love to see how you work with these techniques. Please leave a comment below if you had fun and you tried them, and what are your observations. What is the one unique mark that keeps on showing up in your studies? I would love to know. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.